Hi, I'm Ed Bacon, the rector of All Saints Church, Pasadena. Whoever you are and wherever you find yourself on the journey of faith, I hope that you'll find something here that speaks to you. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning. What a lively bunch. You're all congratulating one another at getting through the marathon, and we want to congratulate you for that too. Welcome to Kenny Turan's Sunday here at All Saints Church. A special welcome to those of you who are watching us in your jammies or over breakfast by streaming. We're very glad you're with us. Just a note, if you're visiting, if you're not a member of All Saints Church, we have a welcome table at the back with lots of information about All Saints and a red welcome bag we'd invite you to take with you and find out what we do every Sunday around here. It's always this fun. So Turan Sunday is a part of our All Saints liturgical calendar, and it's actually easier to figure out than Easter because it's always the week before the Oscars. So that's why you're all here. I don't think we need a long introduction for Ken. You all know him and love him. He's been a film critic for the LA Times since 1991 and the director of the Los Angeles Times Book Prizes since 1993. He's the founding film critic for Arts Alive on KUSC-FM, teaches at USC, and provides regular reviews for Morning Edition, which we all probably listened to yesterday, I think, or the day before. We have a couple of Ken's books for sale. They make great Oscar party hostess gifts. We have Never Coming to a Theater Near You, about the kind of movies we all really love, and Free for All, about Joe Papp, the public, and the greatest theater story ever told, a real labor of love on Ken's part. So I hope you have a pen and paper ready. I know I do. So many of my favorite films of the past couple years I learned about in this forum, Best of Youth, Animal Kingdom. I always walk away with a gem. So invite you to take lots of notes and have lots of questions. Let's welcome our critic in residence and great friend of All Saints Church, Ken Turan.
Thank you. Wow. I'm always afraid I'm going to let people down. I always get so nervous. People are so expectant, and, what am I going to say? The first thing I always want to say is what a real pleasure it is for me to be here. When you have a job like I have, people think they know what the benefits of the job are and what the good parts of the job are. But for me, this is one of the real benefits of the job. Seriously. To be able to partake in the kind of discussion that comes out of the questions here, I look forward to it every year, and I'm really happy to be back. The only thing I wanted to say, I guess I don't like to talk much in the beginning because I like the questions so much, I want to save time for them. I just wanted to say a word or two. There's a piece I've written that's going to be in the paper, God willing, next Sunday, about, it looks like by all the signs, if there are signs, kind of like portents and, reading of entrails and awards, that Argo will win Best Picture. I mean, nothing is sure. It's a very unusual year this year. No one is really sure what's going to happen. But Argo has basically won everything. It's kind of like Caesar's legions. It's just kind of going forward and taking everything. And I realized that I started to feel, even though, as you may know, I'm a fan of Argo. It's got some flaws, but I'm a fan of it. I put it on my 10 best list. But I realized that the thought of Argo winning Best Picture was going to make me a little sad. And I tried to figure out why. And one of the thoughts I had was that it's really not, it doesn't say anything about Argo. It doesn't say anything about the Academy. It says something about the state of the film business that I'm a little sad. Because I really feel, and people in this room are also old enough to remember or to have seen films, there was a time when films like Argo were business as usual for the movie business. They're just good, solid, entertaining movies, nothing wrong with it. But the notion that this is going to be the best picture of the year, it kind of depressed me a little bit. Again, it's nothing against the film, but I say, why aren't, this shouldn't be an event. This shouldn't be so special that it's the best picture, but it looks like that's going to happen. But again, that's just for me, that's just kind of food for thought about. And again, this is old news that Hollywood is not making films like this anymore. But every time I'm reminded of it, it's kind of painful one more time to say this is where we are now. This is so special and so unusual for a studio film that it might win. So anyway, It's just my opening gambit, and I'm ready for questions. At least I hope I'm ready. I may not be ready.
Hi. I agree with you about Argo as the kind of movie they used to make. I wonder if a lot of its popularity with the Academy is that it is a movie a lot about Hollywood, and they're enjoying that part of it so much.
That's a good point. I mean, it is about Hollywood. That's the best. For me, those are the parts that are, even though those are, in some ways made up, those are some of the truest parts of the film. And, I mean, again, one of the things that fascinates me is, I'm sure there'll be a question about Zero Dark 30 at some point, but, there's so much that's made up in Argo, even though it says it's based on a real story. They never really pushed that, so people have given it a pass, but so much in that film is just made up of whole cloth. I mean, nothing, when the real people went through the airport, nothing happened. I mean, they just showed them their passports, they got on the plane, and they took off. That thing through the bazaar never happened. They never took a trip through the bazaar. I just read in the New York Times this morning that Hamilton Jordan didn't, there's this big thing in the film where he gets called up and the caller makes believe that he's from his children's school. Well, he didn't have children at that point in time. So I just found that out this morning. So, but because they never said that they were scrupulous, and because it's so entertaining, people have given them a pass. Yeah.
Good morning. I was able to see all 9 movies that were nominated for Best Picture this year.
Wow.
And yeah, it's quite a task.
That is worthy of applause.
There was one movie that did not make that list, which is already available on pay-per-view, which absolutely blew me away, which was Flight, starring Denzel Washington. And I was expecting kind of the light stuff that he's been doing, with taking a 1, 2, 3 Pelham and whatnot. But I thought it was well acted, nuanced, and had a nice twist at the end. What are your comments on Flight?
I had kind of a rogue response to Flight. I mean, I thought his performance was terrific. I mean, I think he's one of those actors. First of all, I don't remember seeing a bad performance from him. There are some actors who just never put a foot wrong, and he is one of them. I really liked his performance. It felt, in all candor, it felt for me too much like I felt like I was at an AA meeting, And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not what I'm looking for. I mean, it devolved to that more than I would have liked it to. But I think it's a very well-made film. I mean, that made me never want to get on an airplane again. It's really scary, but I think it's a good film. Why it didn't get on, it could have well been on the list. I don't know why the Academy didn't pick it, because people seem to like it, but who knows?
George?
I have a question.
Oh my God, George, you've written it down. This is a little scary.
I got up early to write this down. I want Ed Bacon to know that, and someone should tell him, that I take credit for bringing Kenneth Turan here at All Saints Church.
Thank you.
And for more than 20 years, you've never disappointed us, and I'm grateful for that. You are America's preeminent film critic. All Saints Church has taken a position that torture is always wrong, always wrong. So I was greatly troubled by your implied endorsement of torture in your response to Zero Dark 30. Your dismissal of the protest against the implied endorsement of torture leading to the location of Osama bin Laden was troubling to me and to many people in this room. Nothing was tortured more in Bigelow's film Zero Dark 30 than the truth about torture. So I respectfully ask your response to this.
Well, that's a very good question. I expected a question like that, frankly. I I didn't, I'd hoped it wouldn't be quite so eloquently phrased, but I don't, this is how Zero Dark 30 worked for me. This is how The Crisis worked for me. I saw the film early. I hadn't heard anything about it. And again, there's a famous quote by Robert Warshaw saying, a critic is a man who goes into a movie and he should never forget that he is that man. In other words, we all have our personal responses to films. I walked out of Zero Dark 30. This is how I felt. I felt torture is horrible. We should never do it. I mean, this notion that the film endorses torture or makes it look like something we should be doing, it just didn't hit me that way. I really walked out and said, boy, this is like, we shouldn't be torturing. There's nothing we get out of it that makes it worth doing. I didn't feel that the film says torture led to Osama bin Laden. I felt like the film said to me, this woman's tenacity led to Osama bin Laden. And I realized other people saw the film differently, but that's how I saw it. I just didn't believe me. I am not, I don't know, feel I have to say I don't endorse torture, but I don't, I would never, and I didn't feel the film said that. Other people saw it and felt differently. But I can only speak for how I feel, and I feel the film speaks out against torture because it shows it is so horrible. And, that's the answer, I guess. I mean, I didn't feel that. I mean, that's just, I could lie and make believe I felt it, but I didn't feel it. Do you have, yeah.
I'm going to change the topic a little bit, a little lighter weight. Since Argo was so fantasy, how accurate was Lincoln?
Well, there is, now this has become, this is kind of, sometimes you roll your eyes. There is now, as you may know, a controversy about how Connecticut voted, which I don't know. Apparently how Connecticut voted was misrepresented. And I don't know. A long time ago, I worked for the Washington Post, and I was there during all the President's Men. I didn't have anything to do with it. I was in another department. I didn't help bring down Nixon, but I was there. And then they make the movie. They make All the President's Men. And I go to see it, and they tried extremely hard to be accurate. And what I realized is that by definition, when you make a film, you change reality. The notion of putting it up there on a big screen. I remember one thing in particular, when Carl Bernstein, Dustin Hoffman is calling around and people are hanging up on him. And I sat there and I said, boy, that's really glamorous. Boy, they hung up on him. How exciting. And then I realized, no, you've had people hang up on you. It's a horrible feeling. But to see it on the screen, it looks glamorous. So from that point on, I stopped expecting accuracy from film. I think even when films try to be accurate, they, by definition, they blow things up, they get things wrong. Even documentary filmmakers fall into that trap. I once had this conversation with a man named Frederick Wiseman, who makes these very straight-ahead documentaries, not even any voiceover. He doesn't want he doesn't want to lead the the viewers in any way. And he said, the notion that my films are objective is totally wrong. He said, every cut I make, every decision I make is an editorial decision, is a creative decision. So, films I don't expect films to be accurate. I wish they didn't advertise themselves as accurate because then it leads to confusion. But I just, probably, Lincoln is probably not 100% accurate, but I don't expect it to be. I can read the books if I want 100% accuracy. And even historians change their minds, and historians fight, and historians say this was misinterpreted. So, again, I can't vouch for, I like Lincoln a lot, and I'm sorry that if anyone's here from Connecticut that you're, it was misinterpreted, or the vote was inaccurately portrayed, but, I look at the bigger picture somehow.
Hi, over here. Yoo-hoo. Ken.
I was
When it first
Distracted.
came out, some of my All Saints friends recommended Beast of the Southern Wild. I didn't see
Yeah.
it until it was out on DVD, but I don't know, maybe I'm just dense. I didn't get emotionally involved. I really didn't get it. I'm wondering can you help me to know what I was supposed to get?
Unfortunately, I cannot help you because, this is how I think of Beast of the Southern Wild. My wife doesn't like sushi. She just doesn't like it. And if you took her to Tokyo, to the best sushi place in the world, she would probably say, I appreciate that this is really good sushi, but I just don't like sushi. And Beast of the Southern Wild is a kind of filmmaking that is not for me. It's not. I prefer more conventional stories. More straight ahead things. This kind of magical realism in film, I have nothing against it, and I think they did it very well. It's just not to my taste. And I really think it's a great story. They're wonderful young people who made this film, and I like that they made it and that they made a success of it and that it opened doors for people. But personally, it's just not what I'm looking for. There's nothing against it, but again, it's just like it's like a kind of food. You either like it or you don't like it. The people who like that, like the people who like sushi, are very passionate. And, one of the things that happens with this, there's this very intricate way that the Academy votes, which is I could not begin to explain, and I think only 3 people in the world really understand the voting system. But if you really like, it's staggered in a way that your first choice is hugely important. And a lot of the people who like that film really like it, and that's why it got so far in the Academy, is that they made the parts of that film their first choices. And, paradoxically, people feel that this is what happened to Ben Affleck, is that everyone felt that, well, someone else is going to vote for Ben Affleck, and I'm going to make sure to vote for Beast of the Southern Wild, and someone else will see to it that Ben Affleck gets in. And nobody saw to it that Ben Affleck got in, and so he didn't get in.
Well, before we go to the next mic, we've touched on 4, I think, of the Best Picture nominees. Which one would you vote for?
Well, I would vote, I made it my number 1 film in my year-end 10 best list. I'm an Amour fan. I just think Amour is really a remarkable piece of work. It's hard to, it's painful. It's not an easy film to watch. This is people know Amour, right? The Michael Haneke film. I thought it was a really kind of, he's a very cold. I've never liked his films. He's a cold director. His films have really seemed sadistic to me at times towards the audience. Some of them I won't even see for that reason. But I thought the combination of such a cold director with such an emotional subject was really powerful, and that's why the film worked for me. So I think that would, but that's not going to win.
Okay, over here. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hold on.
Let's get the mic to you. I'm sorry. I didn't know the mic wasn't over there.
So I was going to ask a broader question. Do you think and The Hobbit compared to The Lord of the Rings did, the first Lord of the Rings film did very well. Do you think this trilogy, with the Tolkien trilogies and the Twilight trilogies and the, these, have they sort of run their course? Are we done with making big picture movies that get played out over 3 years, big budget?
Well, I don't know. The Twilight, I guess it was 4 films. I guess it was a tetralogy or whatever, 4 quartet. Simpler word. The Twilight films made a lot. You realize that all these things are just there for financial reasons. I think The Hobbit is, I think one of the problems with The Hobbit was that there's not enough story to make it into 3 films, and the first one felt enormously padded. I think the studio wants the money that 3 films will bring, and I think Peter Jackson just likes being in that world. I don't think Peter Jackson's doing it for money. He just likes, these are his people, so he likes hanging out with them. But, as long as, I don't think it's played out yet, no. We have the Hunger Games still going on, and if these continue to make money, they'll continue to make them that way. I think it's a bad sign, but there's nothing but bad signs.
Okay, over here.
Yes, you started out talking about the culture of Hollywood or culture of movies, and using Argo as a representative of what's going on, perhaps. And this morning in the LA Times, there's Charles McNulty wrote about the culture of violence. He was mostly referring to theater, but one could write that of movies as well. And I was just wondering, what do you think is going on generally in movies? What is the trend? And what do you think about the culture of violence, which to me seems to be one of the big trends?
Yeah, I think it's not too strong to say I'm just really horrified by the culture of violence in movies. I'm just not a person who gets any pleasure out of seeing violent films. And in fact, I will announce, I don't know if there'd be a question, I have not seen Django because it's so violent from what I've heard. I just don't get anything out of that anymore. It wasn't assigned to me to review, and I just didn't want to see it, Unfortunately, in a profit-driven business, it's very difficult. It's like equivalent of trying to, of getting gun control through. It's very difficult to get violence out of the movies because it makes money, and you can't, there's no way around that. My fear is that the violence will get so bad that at some future date, we'll have some kind of, counter-revolution, and everything at all troublesome will be removed from films, that people will have had too much and will go too far in the opposite direction. I wish the industry could self-regulate. I wish they would even think of self-regulating, but there just is no interest in doing that. And I think the ratings board is too lenient on violence. I think they really have a history of not rating films X for violence. Nothing gets rated X anymore, but sometimes violent films get PG-13s, I'm really sick about it, but there's nothing, I don't know what we can do about it except, I think that's part of the reason I haven't gone to Django. I don't want to support it. All we can do is not go, even if they sound interesting or if your friends are talking about them. I don't want to support Django. I don't want to give Quentin Tarantino up another penny, because that's the only language that people understand in Hollywood is money, Yeah.
Hi, I want to ask about films for children, elementary school and preteen movies that are rated G. It's almost impossible to find a G-rated movie nowadays that is intelligent, live action, wholesome story. Do you have any suggestions?
Boy, rent some old ones. It's tragic, but again, it's a money issue. I think a lot of parents want to push the envelope with what they take their kids to. They don't want to be, most parents fear that if they go to a G-rated movie, they'll be totally bored. And even though it's good for their kids, they don't want to do it. Older kids don't want to see a G movie. So there are a lot of pressures on studios not to make G movies, and again, I don't know, what could be done about that, Rent the old stuff, and hope for, eventually, everything's go in cycles. I think eventually this will come back. One will get made that's really good against all odds. One will get made that's really good that makes a lot of money, and everyone will wake up and say, oh, we can do this.
And you'll review it.
And I'll review it, and you guys will go, and it'll make a lot of money.
After viewing Amour, and when the lights came on, a lady in the far aisle says, oh, and I thought it was going to be a love story. And I yelled across, it is a love story. Did she yell anything back? It seems like there's been so much solicitation for votes in the papers this year. My impression is that it's kind of way over the top now. Do you see an increase in that this year?
Well, we had a piece in the paper about this a few days ago, and I think there has been an increase this year. Part of the reason what our story said was that I think both Lincoln and Argo are put out by major studios, which have more money. When some of the best picture contenders are put out by even places like the Weinstein Company, like Harvey Weinstein, the amount of money they can spend, that they have to spend, is less than what studios have. So also it's a close race this year, so everyone feels that maybe they could win. And also the films are put out by entities that have the money to spend. So everyone says that this is like the most money that's ever been spent. I can't really complain about it. It helps keep the LA Times in business. And I wish that was a joke, but that's... But, we make a lot of money on those ads. And, this is a year where people with deep pockets felt they had a chance. And that's why there's been so much this year.
Could you share with us one or two films of this past year that didn't come to a theater near us, but that you recommend?
Well, there was one right at the end of the year that I really liked that got good reviews, and I think it might have done okay, but I think it's one of the ones, if I do another edition of that book, I would put in. It's a German film called Barbara. I don't know if anybody saw it. Well, good. It's unusual to go to an audience. That's why I like coming here, because people have seen Barbara. This is just a really thoughtful, adult drama about real crises in people's lives, and I thought that was terrific. The documentary, I don't think it'll win, unfortunately, but the documentary, The Gatekeepers, I think is just a phenomenal film. It's got the 6 former heads of Shin Bet, Israel's internal security organization, all talking on camera, the first time they've ever all spoken on camera, and what they say about the country's again, this is not, some left-wing fringe group. These are people who are at the very heart of the Israeli establishment, and what they say about what they themselves had done is just really phenomenal. People, I have yet to hear a real negative about that film, which is interesting. So I think those are two that come off the top of my head that are really, and again, The Gatekeepers, even though it's a documentary, I've seen this film 3 times for a variety of reasons, and it's interested me all the way through every time. It's just phenomenally interesting film. So those two, I think I would put at the top of the list.
Okay, over here. I absolutely loved Les Mis, and both my sons saw it with me, a teenager and a 20-something. And they both enjoyed it, but they said it's so weird for people to sing. Now, they listen to music, so they listen to, music that actually has lyrics that are understandable. So they enjoy music, they enjoy movies. Why is it that this generation has such trouble with musicals?
They just haven't made enough of them over the years, I think. It's just not, it's gone out of being part of the culture. It used to be, the 30s, probably more the 30s, but, all the Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers films, the Rodgers and Hammerstein films. It used to be that these were around, and they stopped, for whatever reason, they stopped being successful, they stopped being around. I think Chicago was the last one I can remember that made a splash. I think it's just unfamiliar. I don't think there's any reason why people couldn't like it, but it's just something they haven't seen. That would be my guess, so it seems kind of odd. And one thing I just had a note that this is one of the fascinating things I learned during the year about Les Mis was that you all know probably if you're interested in it that it was sung live, and this was a big difference. I was at a Q&A with the director, and he said that 2 things. Number one, he said to get the sound to sound better, the microphones were on the outside of costumes, not inside costumes, on the outside of costumes. And they were removed digitally frame by frame. And, this is one reason why films cost so much, That's a lot of labor and a lot of expense. But frame by frame, they took the microphones out. Yeah.
Hi, I was wondering, you told us what your choice was for Best Picture. Can you go through the other major categories, including foreign film, saying what you think should win and how you arrived at that decision?
I wish I was, one of the things I forgot to bring was a list of what all the categories are. I could see. Well, foreign language film, I think, again, how I come to my, what I try and do when I think about who's going to win is try not to think about myself. You know what I mean? It's you're trying to predict what a body of people is going to do. And my own taste, no, but when you say, how do I come to the conclusion of what's going to win? It's by talking to people and hearing what people are saying and reading the trade press and just getting a sense. This is a finite, I've said this before, if the Oscars were voted on by the congregation of All Saints, you'd have an idea just by being among the people and talking to people what they would be picking. And the Academy is just the same way. I'm sorry, did I misunderstand your question? On what I like? And what I thought was the best. Well, obviously, Amour, I think, is the best film, and I think Amour is the best foreign language film as well. I mean, they wouldn't win both. I would vote for Daniel Day-Lewis for Best Actor. I think he's going to win, even though, I mean, we ran a story that you can see in real life he wears earrings and he removed them, but you can still see the little holes. This was in the new entertainment-friendly Los Angeles Times. This was a front-page story. But on the other hand, I read it from beginning to end, so I thought it was a lot of fun. So apparently they didn't do the makeup well enough on the ear, and you could see the hole. But people from Connecticut were upset about that. What else? Best Actress, I would vote for Emmanuelle Riva. I mean, I think that's the woman from Amour. I mean, I guess I'd be voting the straight Amour ticket. I mean, I think that's an exceptional film, and I think, I would be happy. It was well thought enough of to get 5 Oscar nominations, which is quite something for a difficult foreign language film. So I would be happy to see that win in all its categories. I would vote for Alan Arkin, I think, for Best Supporting Actor, because he just makes me laugh. I think he's really funny. And I just think he brought an energy to the film that is a good part of the reason why it is successful. Trying to think, I can't remember the supporting actress category.
Jackie Weaver.
Anne Hathaway. Well, I would vote for Anne Hathaway, even though it's a tiny, but, supporting actress roles, the winners usually are small but memorable roles. They don't necessarily run through the whole film, and I thought that, what she did in the very short amount of time really... I liked Les Mis more than I thought I would. I wasn't particularly a fan of it as a stage play, but I went and I saw it, and I thought it was quite impressive, so I'd be happy to see her win. Partly because none of the other actresses really pushed her off my radar enough, even though they're all good. I'm sorry? I liked Sally Field, actually. I thought she was better than, they found a way to kind of use her Sally Fieldness to advantage. Which I thought was very shrewd casting, So I liked her. I thought she was good. Director, well, I would go. I don't know who I'd go. Is Michael Haneke? No, he is nominated, I think. So I would probably vote for him. But I might vote for Steven Spielberg. I mean, that's a very strong category. I might vote for Steven Spielberg because I think what he did with Lincoln is very unlike a lot of his films. It's not a flashy movie. We're used to him doing stuff that's very kind of elaborate and showy. This is a very unshowy job of direction. It's a film that's really about the performance. It's about the screenplay. And I admired that. I liked Silver Linings Playbook a lot because I really thought it was fun. But, it's a film you can't pigeonhole. I laughed a lot, but I would never call it a comedy. And I like films that do that kind of go around the boundary like that. And I thought it had it felt like it was made by people who understood what it's like to be crazy, which I think really helps the film. There's an authenticity to the mania there that I think really helped the film. So again, those are some of my choices.
Like you, I like small films too. But when I was checking your list last night of your top 10 picks for the year, I was shocked, that a movie of the masterpiece of Life of Pi was not on your top 10 list. I mean, I just felt that movie was just a cinematic masterpiece, and I'd like to know why you didn't include it in your top 10 pictures.
No, that's a fair question. They're all fair questions. Sometimes the answers are unfair, but the questions are always fair. The midsection of the film I really thought was spectacular. When he's on the boat with the tigers and the animals, I thought visually and just in every possible way it was really fascinating and really well done. I had trouble. First of all, I am a person who did not read the book first, so I didn't know what to expect. I found the framing device just didn't work for me. The beginning, I got bored with all the stuff that was going on in the beginning. And the way the resolution, I just felt terribly let down, I just didn't feel lifted up the way I guess you're supposed to. I said, this is what it's all about. This has been a parable. It didn't really happen. I really felt let down, I mean, that's just, again, I just have to be what I feel, and that's what loved the middle section. the spiritual portion of it, which I guess works maybe more in the book, I didn't feel it in the film. You know, I felt more of that in Amour. You know, I felt Amour was a very spiritual film to me, much more than Life of Pi. So yeah. Yeah. No, to me, it wasn't, like I say, the fantasy parts worked. It was the real world parts that surrounded the fantasy that didn't work. The fantasy in Life of Pi I thought was spectacular. I mean, that stuff on the boat with the tie, I still have no idea how they did that. I mean, I know they used computers, but boy, it felt awfully real to me, you know, and I loved the middle part, but the rest of it, I just didn't get the surrounding stuff.
Okay, right here. What did you think of the movies The Master and Cloud Atlas?
Well, those are two of the. I like The Master. I mean, maybe I should say I did like The Master. I admired it a lot. I think Paul Thomas Anderson is just a terrific filmmaker, and he really, really understands the medium, and he doesn't want to do the accepted things. And again, sometimes I want more conventional filmmaking in the sense that, I mean, The Master resolves in kind of an intentionally unsatisfying way. You know, there's kind of classic conclusions that we want from films. You know, we want the not all of us, not him. You know, we want the kind of the ends tied up in a very nice, tidy way, and that's just anathema to him. You know, he just doesn't want to do it. You know, which is perfectly fine. And he's a wonderful filmmaker. He makes his films his way. I just didn't. I just couldn't love it for that reason, even though I thought it was a very good film. Cloud Atlas, I just didn't think worked. You know, for me, it felt gimmicky, having everyone in the, same actors appearing in different costumes in different periods. I just felt dramatically I wasn't convinced by what was going on. You know, and where The Master, I was. I thought The Master, I much prefer The Master to Cloud Atlas. But again, it's not totally what I'm looking for.
What did you think about the device of Anna Karenina?
Well, again, it didn't...
Confusing?
I mean, again, on some level, you want to applaud. You know, this was an attempt to kind of do Anna Karenina in some ways a non-realistic manner. A lot of it was set just kind of backstage in a theater. Yeah. And I just didn't get involved in it. I mean, I thought it was interesting in theory. In practice, I just was kind of frustrated by it. And I didn't think Keira Knightley was... that didn't help. It just didn't. You know, I admired the attempt that they made to do it differently, but emotionally, I wanted, especially with Anna Karenina, you want to feel an emotional connection, and it's almost like they wanted to distance you. It was almost like perverse. You know, why see Anna Karenina to be pushed away? You know, I don't want to be pushed away. You know, and I just didn't think it really worked, even though in theory it sounds fascinating and might have been fascinating.
Hi, you talked about your picks for favorite actor and actress. I'd love to hear more about some of the other favorite actor and actress performances of the year, whether they're nominated or not.
Well, I liked a lot of the nominated performances. I thought Jessica Chastain was terrific. I mean, I think she's both Jessica Chastain and Jennifer Lawrence. I like both of them, and they both have that same quality, which is they seem to be able to do anything. You know, I mean, like Robert De Niro was always Robert De Niro, you know. But Jessica Chastain and Jennifer Lawrence really managed to do the classic actor thing of just they become different people. You know, if you saw Jessica Chastain in The Help, you would not believe that she could be the woman in Zero Dark 30. You know, they seem like the same person, couldn't do them. And again, if you watch Jennifer Lawrence on some of her TV appearances when she talks, you know, she seems like she's just a kid. But when she gets in front of the camera, there's almost like nothing she can't do. There's no one she can't convince you that she is. And so those are two of my favorites. I mean, I think that's a very strong category. You know. And, you know, Barbara, the film I mentioned, has just a phenomenal lead performance by the German actress, whose name I'm blanking out on, one of the top German actresses. So there's a lot of good stuff out there. Boy, the actor side. Well, I thought Bradley Cooper was really good in Silver Linings Playbook. Again, that was something I don't know that I would have predicted that he could do that. People didn't think he had it in him, possibly, because he's done a lot of lighter stuff. I mean, it really makes you realize how much actors can be straitjacketed. by what the studios think they can do or what the studios want, and that's why they jump at things like this. I remember, when Anne Hathaway did, the wedding movie, which were Rachel Getting Married, where again, a lot of people, nobody knew she could do anything like this because the studios had pushed her into things that were much lighter, much frothier. So I wish that there was more opportunity for actors and actresses to do stuff that we could say, wow, I didn't know they could do that.
Hi, Ken. Hi. This is called Sleuthing the Oscars. And you were spotted entering the Billy Wilder Theater 2 days ago to see a screening. Is there anything that we should know about?
You know what I saw? That is really, it's true. I mean, I could deny it. That wasn't me. It was someone else. My favorite event one of my favorite film events in Los Angeles, right up there with appearing at All Saints, is the UCLA Festival of Preservation. Every 2 years, UCLA showcases. UCLA is one of the few places in the country that actually restores old films. The Library of Congress does it. UCLA is one of the key people really in the world that restores films. And every 2 years, they have a festival where they showcase their restorations. And they often restore very unusual films that, I've never heard of, most people have never heard of, that are just totally charming. They're fun, they're interesting, they're totally unknown, and they restore a whole range of stuff, but I tend to focus on the ones I haven't seen. So what I was doing was looking at some of their restorations. That's what I was doing there. So that festival is going to start, I think, March 1st. Get the UCLA catalog. I'm going to have a piece in it in a couple of weeks. It's just, if you like unknown films, Hollywood films you've never heard of from the Golden Age, there's some gems there. There's one film I saw that again, they're so silly, these films. It's one called 30-Day Princess. This is a film I'd never heard of, and the only two names that I recognize, Preston Sturges had a co-screenwriting credit. This was an early film for him. And Sylvia Sidney, who's been in a lot of film noirs, this is a comic role for her. Which is very unusual. She plays a European princess, comes over here to kind of raise money for their country and gets the mumps and cannot go on the fundraising tour, so they have to find someone who looks like her to pretend to be the princess. And they find this out-of-work actress, and Sylvia Sidney plays both the princess and the out-of-work actress. And it's just a trifle, it's no more anything than it sounds, but it was such a treat to see this film, so 30-Day Princess, you heard it first here. It's not going to win an Oscar. It's too late to win an Oscar.
Okay, where's the microphone?
Two pictures I'd like to ask you about, one of which is Another Earth, and the other one is Seeking a Friend for the End of the World.
Yeah, I didn't see Seeking a Friend for the End of the World. That's a film that I saw the trailer for, and I felt it wasn't going to be for me. I may have, it's one of the unfortunate things I have to do. I don't have time to see everything that comes out, and sometimes I just look at the trailer and I see if I think I'm going to connect to it. And it just didn't, I did not connect to it. I didn't connect to the trailer. I might have liked the film, but I didn't. Again, there's just not. Yeah. Was it? And Another Earth, I thought, was a fascinating concept. It's a film that was in Sundance last year and got a small release about they discovered that there's another Earth up there. There's a parallel, the duplicate of our planet up in the sky. And I love that concept. I just didn't get enough from the story. The actual people involved, I just was not, it's always, I'm sorry not to necessarily like things, but I just didn't work for me.
Okay, microphone back here.
Yeah, hi. As a scientist, one of the best documentaries I've seen during the year that was very gratifying because it shows a lot of the pain of research by someone who's not necessarily a scientist was Chasing Ice, which was just spectacular unexpectedly for us.
No, and that's really a visual, unfortunately, that's really a film that should be seen in the theater. It's stunning visually, this, scientists who are going around taking, showing the ice is disappearing, And it's a very good film. I can't remember if it get. It might have been one of the 5 films nominated for Best Documentary. I can't quite remember. Yeah, but no, I think that's quite a good film. And if you have a big screen, you should definitely rent it. But no, that was quite good. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Where are the microphones?
Oops.
Oh, sorry. Oh, down here.
Yeah.
Some years ago, my George was in a movie called Rumor Has It. He was the priest that did a couple of weddings in it. Yesterday, and he had to join the Screen Actors Guild. Yesterday we got a check, and he had said, anything I make you can have. He opened the check, $14. So my question to you is, if he's ever in a film, will you please review it?
I will. But again, this is why actors struggle, because that's the kind of checks they get.
Okay, one more question. Where's the microphone? Okay, this is going to be the last question.
I believe the film Salmon Fishing in Yemen came out this year. I loved it. Can you talk about that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was a charming small film. I enjoyed it too. It was better than I thought it would be. It's Emily Blunt and Ewan McGregor, and they're both really good professional actors. They formed a good couple. I enjoyed it. It did okay. It did better than some people. It's hard to get adults to go to films because we've been burned so often by films that pretend to be as charming as that is, that people just don't want to go. People think they'll rent it, But I thought it was a charming film. I had a very good time with it. I'm glad you mentioned it. Yeah.
Okay, we need to go back to church, so let's thank Kenny.
Thank you.